Like some of you may already know, ELOQUENCE is a Horizon Europe project that is pioneering the development of advanced voice chatbot technologies aimed at transforming unstructured dialogues into comprehensible, safe, and unbiased interactions. Our focus is on creating self-learning adaptable models for diverse languages and use cases, emphasizing sustainability and European values, especially in safety-critical applications. So we aim to set new standards in AI, ensuring privacy, bias detection, and empathetic user engagement. And my name is Jelena, and I'll be moderating this session. I'm joined today with Martin Scheinin from the European University Institute, who will help us better understand emotion detection by AI, whether AI can or should emulate human empathy. So, for starters, Martin, could you please introduce yourself and maybe share what drew you into this field? And perhaps you could tell us about the European University Institute's role within the ELOQUENCE project.
Thank you very much, Jelena. Pleased to be with you today. Yes, I'm a professor of international law and human rights at the European University Institute. Have finished my term as full-time professor, and now I'm their part-time professor, as well as at Lund University in Sweden. And I have a long career in international law and human rights, and perhaps in particular in human rights assessment methodology development. And that's also where we come in to ELOQUENCE, that we are responsible for the assessment and validation of emerging ELOQUENCE AI outputs as to whether they comply with human rights, ethics, and European values as a broader term. I have a presentation, so I will share my screen.
Perfect.
I'm going to follow the title, Ethical AI and Human Rights, Challenges for Policymakers. That was what I was asked to speak about. And I have included a little bit of an afterthought, a wider part into my presentation, which has the title, The Big Picture. And I will later on explain why I decided to add this part one into my presentation, which originally I planned to focus on the ELOQUENCE project, but that will come as part two. Well, the big picture, the digital age and artificial intelligence as part of it is one of the main challenges that contemporary societies are facing. There are others. Climate crisis, the changed security situation are perhaps the main ones, but all this is contributed to by the digital developments, including AI. And when I address these themes, of course, I'm mindful of the old saying about the hammer and nails, but I can't help it that a human rights lawyer and scholar tends to focus on the ensuing human rights challenges related to AI or the other crisis scenarios. There is much hype around AI and everything digital, and I think it's wise to take with a grain of salt both the utopian and the dystopian scenarios about AI as the future, the bad future or the good future. I don't think neither of them actually is true. But what I think is a better analysis of the situation is that the world is going through a polycrisis, where AI and digital megacorporations have a large role, for the good or for the bad. And unfortunately, as things now stand, more likely that they will be on the side of the bad. And I think this is tragic in the sense that through technological development, including the digital age and AI, humanity has reached the preconditions for data-based rational decision-making through a common discourse across physical barriers, across civilizations. We have real-time translation between languages. We can understand each other. Money is no obstacle for discourses between the North and the South, and we have unprecedented data resources to base human decision-making on the best available evidence. Paradoxically, humanity appears to be choosing the path of so-called disruption, which is blocking rational processes to give unfair advantages to the fastest, richest, and most powerful, who now have joined forces with each other. I see as a big dimension of the current polycrisis that the political most powerful decision makers have joined forces with the richest people in the digital industry. And of course, I'm speaking here of Donald Trump and Elon Musk as examples of these categories of persons. What does this mean for policymakers, the polycrisis and the role of digitalization in disruptive processes, stopping rational decision-making and causing an imbalance in power, putting the power into those who have the most money and resources? I think it's wise to see AI as a tool in the service of good or bad, but not actual cause for the bad developments in the world, or even more so, not as an active agent. It is simply a technological tool in the hands of those who control it. Currently, it is primarily a tool for the bad, for ignoring or even aggravating the polycrisis. And the prime example, of course, is that we would have the technological solutions for stopping climate change by the use of solar energy, but the policymakers have chosen exactly the opposite course of action. Drill, baby, drill is the saying. As a technology, AI would be a wonderful tool for the good. Main message to policymakers who are people entrusted with public authority, hopefully elected democratically, and who are subject to democratic accountability and quest for democratic legitimacy, is don't think that our societies have moved away from law, legislation, and legality to some kind of new governance model by policy or regulation that entails public-private partnerships or even delegation to presumably ethical corporate self-regulation. I think that is a wrong course of action, and the consequences have already proven catastrophic. There must be a place for democratically elected legislatures which enact binding law and enforce that law in respect of corporations and other private actors. And quite importantly, and I will soon explain why, that law must be binding also for the state itself, and the same goes for the EU as a supranational power. Trusting corporations to do the job for us will fail. Delegation of authority to corporations and their ethics, so-called ethics, is doomed to fail, as their true ethos is about disruption, market advantage, presumably through monopolies, then co-opting the most powerful people, politicians, and ultimately accumulation of capital without any limits. The saying attributed to one of the last kings of France is "Après moi le déluge," after me the flood. And this is exactly what is happening now, that those in power have decided to ignore the climate crisis and instead are speculating about extending the scope of humanity by saying a man, maybe 2, maybe 8, to Mars, as if that was a solution. And I think it's an indicative change in recent years that when these people speak about money, they no longer count millions. 1 billion is the unit of currency that nowadays matter when Elon Musk or Donald Trump speaks. What I want also to say, nevertheless, is trying to legislate on the details of technology or AI will also fail. And I think this is a false perception among politicians that whenever there's a new development in the field of digitalization or AI, they think of quick fixes, which turn out not to be quick because they negotiate with the corporations. I think digital technologies and their development is hopelessly complex. No legislator will be able to keep up with the pace, and policymakers shouldn't be negotiated with corporations of tailor-made ad hoc fixes on a day-to-day basis. They should be focusing on the principle. Now I'm moving to human rights. Therefore, what I think is needed is higher law that binds not only private actors such as corporations, but also binds the state or EU itself. And we have that type of higher law in the form of human rights or fundamental rights. We have the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, we have modern national constitutions with their bills of rights, and we have international human rights law and its procedures to keep control over the exercise of power by states. And I see there are 5 good reasons why we should trust on human rights as the answer to the question how to control AI and the digitalization more broadly. 1, we have the requirement of legality, law-based governance. 2, human rights establish so-called red lines that must not be crossed. There's the absolute nature of some human rights, so-called non-derogable rights, as the prohibition against torture. And beyond those absolute rights, there's still the inviolability of the essence of any other human right. When there's an issue which touches upon the very essence of, let's say, privacy, that is not allowed, even if privacy as such is a so-called soft right, which is subject to limitations, not limitations that would destroy its core. Thirdly, human rights law accepts pressing social need in the form of legitimate aims that allow for restrictions. But the point is that acceptance is only relative. No end justifies all means, and therefore what matters is the actual results towards the end, not the end in itself. National security is often invoked as something that trumps individual human rights. And often it's presented as an abstract choice between values. But the correct approach is what actual advantage is achieved towards national security through, for instance, mass surveillance, which results in grave human rights harm. And then the answer is strict proportionality. Point number 4. The human rights harm must be smaller than the proven benefit towards the legitimate aim. And this is a test that, for instance, mass surveillance fails regularly. It is invoked in the name of national security, but the proof of national security benefits of mass surveillance upon innocent bystanders who are not suspected of any wrongdoing hasn't been proven. And finally, a point of human rights law is that all decisions and measures are subject to external redress. That means external to the decision maker, external to the executive power or legislative power, and even external to the nation state as such through international redress. Now you ask, why am I giving this general lecture today when I was supposed to speak about eloquence and how it promotes ethical AI? It's because today is the deadline of the ultimatum presented by the so-called US Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, to Anthropic, that Anthropic must remove its last two red lines for the use of AI and accept the use of their products, or even accept the redesign of their products to serve any lawful use of AI by Pentagon. I note that for Hegseth, the word lawful is meaningless, as there are no restraints for use of force by Pentagon, according to him. I remind you that Anthropic is not an angel in this business. They do produce a lot of applications with military use, but they have had the wisdom of seeing also the risk of AI, and therefore they have in place these two red lines. They are against mass domestic surveillance. They accept surveilling others, but not Americans on a mass level. And this is from them, the formulation: AI-driven mass surveillance presents serious novel risks to our fundamental liberties. Exactly. And the second one is fully autonomous weapons, where they accept semi-autonomous weapons and some use of even fully autonomous weapons, but AI systems are not reliable enough yet to power fully autonomous weapons, and they refuse to knowingly provide a product that puts America's warfighters and civilians at risk. Anthropic is known for delaying the release of their LLM Claude, and is known for declining lucrative contracts with Chinese companies in order to protect national security interests of the US. But now they are in a battle with Hegseth, and we will know by the end of today whether they will be compelled to give up their two last remaining red lines. This is why I wanted to address this topic today, and I think it illustrates very well why we need law that binds also the state itself. Because here we have a state actor which is forcing a major corporation to give up its ethics and its own commitment, limited commitment to human rights. So we need hard law which is applicable in relation to the state itself as a higher law, and we need law that is binding upon corporations in the name of human rights and ethics. That was part one. Now I'm moving to some illustrations from ELOQUENCE, and this is much more down to earth and actually is based on what we are doing within the ELOQUENCE project. As mentioned, ELOQUENCE is a Horizon Europe project that develops AI applications, more specifically chat and voice robots, for multilingual and cross-cultural interactions, for context-aware and bias-controlled dialogue systems, including for safety-critical applications. The practical process of ELOQUENCE is focused around 4 pilots and their different components, which are then being assessed through an iterative process by us in so-called work package 6. So we are responsible for the assessment and validation of emerging ELOQUENCE outputs as to their compatibility with human rights, fundamental rights, ethics, and other European values. While the pilot developers are from the field of technology and computer science, we in Work Package 6 are lawyers, ethicists, and others. So it's a multidisciplinary, multi-factor assessment of ongoing work through multiple iterations. What we do is separate from usual ethics and data protection mechanisms within research projects, which focus on the ethics of the research itself. In this Work Package 6 of ELOQUENCE, we assess the law and ethics of the AI applications that emerge as outputs from the project. This is a schematic representation of the process. On top, we have the ELOQUENCE pilot owners and other technical partners that make submissions of new versions of their pilot. They are responsible for incorporating the feedback received from the assessments and then of the further development of the object, such as a pilot AI technology. On the right top corner, you see a red arrow to the right, which is a project output after several iterations. But in between, we have the circle at the bottom, where we have the work package 6 assessments. They are iterative in nature. We think of 3 rounds for each pilot. And we assess for compliance with human rights and other European values through a structured assessment template and 5-member multidisciplinary panels, which include also external experts, external to the project. So we have here the benefit of a multidisciplinary, multi-member panel that does the assessment through a deliberative process. And this is a factor which is very hard to delegate to AI. The human factor here is not one human exercising judgment, but a group of people from different backgrounds and different disciplines deliberating between themselves whether there's a problem or not. On the left, we have some other sources. In addition to the assessment process, we have literature surveys. We have earlier experiences from fundamental rights impact assessments, and we also run an ELOQUENCE survey among 6 target groups to find what Europeans think of emerging AI technologies. We give feedback back to the pilot owners, which then provide a new submission. This assessment methodology has been noted by the EU Innovation Radar as an innovation, which of course we are happy of that recognition. I move to 4 cases. The first case is our emphasis on privacy as an individual right. We have been looking into ELOQUENCE pilot for a smart home assistant that would listen to conversations within a home and use the accumulated information to assist in everyday life. For example, in the administration of daily medication for a family member. One can think that this is useful for sending kids to school, for expectations, what happens after the workday, etc. It becomes like a family member who is in the service of everybody and helps communication within the family. But we detected a flaw in the model. And I believe personally that this flaw is widespread in AI-assisted devices marketed for homes or the workplace. When doing the product development, the developers think of privacy and personal data protection as in the interface between the user, which actually is a computer or other technical device, and the surrounding AI environment. There we can have a firewall, we can have a system of federated learning, keeping the sensitive data at the terminal and never giving it to the centralized system. But the failure is that identifying a user, be there a password or not, does not take into account the reality of families, homes, or workplaces. There are different individuals, there are hierarchical relationships, and there are discussions, for instance, between the grown-ups, the parents. There are discussions with the daughter and the mother. There are discussions between children that are not meant for others to hear. It's not that they are great secrets, but it's part of a nature of family life that there are always confidential things said between 2 or 3 people, which the 4th one should not be hearing. We can think of more drastic situations, that there is an abusive authoritarian father who would misuse the information he gets from this smart home assistant in relation to the children and their interaction with each other, intended to be confidential. This is a general problem, not only related to this smart home assistant, and I believe that there is no technological solution to the question of thinking of the privacy protections only for the user, the hypothetical user, which actually is a technical device instead of a human being. What we need is a culture of human rights together with clear product information. At the moment in ELOQUENCE, the pilot developer thinks that there can be a button, simply stop recording, start recording. And presumably then in the family, people would always agree whether the recording is on or not, so that the smart home assistant will get the information people want to give it. As we all know, this would not work in practice. Either it's always on or it's always off. I don't think there is a technological solution. So, even if a smart home assistant knowing everything that happens in the home would be useful, there's a grave risk that the information it collects will be slipped into situations where it should not be known to other persons in the family. Second case is bias detection. ELOQUENCE is developing AI solutions how to detect bias in AI. That means are large LLMs suffering of biases? Can we, for instance, choose between LLMs on the basis of which one has least serious biases in situations targeted to the needs of the user, the purchaser? So this pilot focuses on LLMs using a simulated study counselor that uses LLMs to give advice to simulated students concerning their studies and choices. And of course, it's a very nice setting where biases will surface, for instance, between men and women, and what recommendations they get from the LLM, while perhaps having exactly the same record of previous studies. Do they get different advice or the same, irrespective whether the question is asked by a man or a woman? But we warned against bias detection based solely on so-called protected characteristics or traditional prohibited grounds for discrimination. Sex or gender, sexual orientation, disability, health status, age, ethnic origin, those are traditional protected characteristics well known for discrimination law. But advanced prohibitions against discrimination in human rights include phrases such as on any ground, such as, and then comes a list, or after the list comes, or other status. And hence, existing discrimination prohibitions are open-ended, also in relation to new grounds of discrimination. When we use bias detection in AI application, we should not ignore new grounds of discrimination, precisely because algorithmic discrimination exactly brings up new grounds of discrimination. AI has made visible that algorithms may identify or even generate new biases as grounds for discrimination. For instance, if you have a camera in job interview situations and you record all job interviews or mortgage application interviews, you may detect that people with tattoos don't get jobs or they don't get a mortgage. And then after that, the AI will use that as a main criterion for rejecting new applications. Because humans never hire a person or give a mortgage to a person who has a tattoo, therefore, the AI will from now on decide that an applicant with a tattoo will not get a mortgage or will not get a job. A softer example is owning a dog. Dog owners have peculiar patterns of walking around in a neighborhood early in the morning at sunrise time, and that may result in negative security classification, because a normal person doesn't walk around in a neighborhood looking at people's homes at 6 in the morning. These problems of new grounds of discrimination, perpetuated or even aggravated by algorithms, are particularly acute with so-called black box algorithms, which don't give you a reason why was this mortgage application or security certification denied. They don't tell it was because of a tattoo or because of a dog. They just give you the result, rejection. Those black box algorithms are protected for proprietary reasons. They are property of that company that developed the algorithm, and it's very hard to get around this problem when decision making is delegated to algorithms. Case 3 is emotion detection. In one of the pilots, detection of emotions may be useful when an AI participant in a discussion between humans will be able to help in resolving disagreements between the human participants. This, as such, sounds acceptable, sounds good, useful. We have some legal parameters here in the sense that the EU AI Act prohibits as unacceptable risk the use of emotion detection in workplace or educational settings, while otherwise emotion detection is classified as high risk AI triggering an impact assessment. In our assessment, we warned of the risk that AI may misunderstand the situation and side with the wrong individual, empowering the one who actually is abusing the situation. The example I used in our discussion was that there may be a situation of an English-speaking discussion between a Greek and a Finn, and the AI thinks that the Greek is being aggressive and the Finn is being calm, and then siding with the Finn, when reality was that these are cultural characteristics, and it might be the Finn who is being manipulative with the low-key emotion used in the discussion. This caused the developing partner to think of a change in the emotion detection so that what would be detected would be a change in one person's emotional state. So differential emotion rather than direct emotion detection. More importantly, perhaps, was that we have advised of the need to focus on the purpose for emotion detection. Is there a permissible purpose? What benefit is obtained towards that purpose? And is that benefit towards the proportionate in relation to the harms emotion detection causes when revealed? And this is not merely hypothetical in the sense that the AI Act, as one ground for rejecting high-risk AI applications, has manipulative use of emotion detection. And quite often one could think that especially commercial applications, you could use emotion detection for manipulation. That people who have, let's say, missed their flights are searching in panic for a new ticket. And if their emotional state is detected, they be overcharged a double price or triple price for the same ticket. They would get cheaper if they could be calm in that situation. And that is, let's say, an unacceptable purpose. Dynamic pricing, depending on the person's emotion. Final example, an extension of the previous one relation to emotion detection. Does AI have empathy? Should it be expressing empathy? And this is a theme that appears actually in the eloquence proposal as accepted by the Commission. There is a goal set that some AIs should be empathetic to make the user experience better. Of course, more appropriately, it's not a question that they are empathetic. They appear to be so in order to be accepted by the participant, the human user. In our assessments, we have warned of multiple risks in building in emulated empathy into AI application. First of all, it's a basic principle of transparency that the human user must know that they are interacting with an AI and not another person. And their emulating empathy may be misleading, especially for new users of AI. People who rarely use AI may be misled to believe that they are actually engaging with a human who has empathy. Secondly, fake empathy may be counterproductive when it annoys the human user. And this may be particularly relevant for the opposite group, people who are well versed, very much used to dealing with AI. They may get annoyed and with counterproductive consequences annoyed of having been met with emulated empathy. Further, emulation of empathy is a main cause for LLMs hallucinating, meaning giving untruthful or otherwise wrong answers to the same questions. They tend to compromise to navigate with a human being who expresses suspicion in respect of one answer giving the LLM, and they shift to positions that are clearly untruthful, simply because they are built to emulate empathy and side with the person who presses for a better answer. And finally, while some of these scenarios may seem innocent, we also remind that things can go terribly wrong. We have documented horror stories when an empathetic AI becomes the only friend of a suicidal person and ultimately encourages them to terminate their own life. This has happened, and it will happen, and emulating empathy is one reason why AI in this particular situation is so dangerous. For the use of empathy, emulated empathy in AI, I think it is useful to be clear about the distinction between cognitive and affective empathy. Cognitive empathy is about detecting the other human's state of mind. It's about knowledge. And affective empathy is about siding with the other person, sharing the emotion of the person you are talking with. And it's a sad thing that one definition of psychopath is that they have high cognitive empathy but no affective empathy. They actually don't feel with the other person, but they use and manipulate by being able to detect and know what is the emotional state of the other person. And I think it is wise to say that AI, unfortunately, may very well meet the definition of a psychopath. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for sharing quite interesting insights. And big thank you to everyone who joined us today. Are there any questions from our listeners? Maybe you can maybe write your question in the chat box if you want, if it's easier for you. No? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Martin. I really enjoyed meeting you and learning more about ethical AI and human rights. I just have one quick question for you. Recently, we shared an eloquence survey. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, Jelena, maybe you can include the link into the video version of the webinar, perhaps even now in the chat. Yes, we
Yes.
are running a eloquence survey about what people think about AI. It's run across Europe. We don't establish any national borders. Anybody can participate. But the idea is to have a control group of those who don't tick any box, and then 6 target groups that we hope particularly to encourage participating in the survey. It has questions related to technologies that resemble those developed in eloquence. So it's focusing on generative AIs, and we hope to see responses so that we can differentiate what is supported and what is not supported. And the target groups include elderly people, women, people of African descent, foreigners in their country of residence, persons with disabilities, and people from LGBTI minorities. And everybody can self-identify with one or several of these groups, or doesn't need to self-identify with any of them. The survey is run by EU survey, which means that it's completely anonymous. No personal data is shared with the survey. Nothing is delivered to the researchers in eloquence who are dealing with the results. It's simply a statistical tabulation of the results. In addition, there is a free text question at the end for any additional comments, which can be written in any language, and we will then translate them.
Thank you, Martin. Perfect. Thank you once again. I really enjoyed meeting you and learning quite a lot of new things, actually. So yes, this webinar was recorded, and you will find it on our social media probably next week. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe to all of our social media channels, and enjoy your weekend, and goodbye till the next time. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.